Good morning, everybody. We are going to talk about the economy. Now, I want to start off with one indicator in particular, and that is things like Amazon Haul. I don't look at that as being a good thing. Of course, everything's been Temuified and Wishified, but honestly, I see that as a sign of desperation. If Amazon has gotten to the point where they can't sell shit to people, things are in a bad spot when they have to create a whole new structure, essentially adopt Wish and Temu style um, product sales. That just reads to me as shit. We got to squeeze every last dollar that we can out of these people, and we're going to sell them sponges, you know? Just dumb shit. Dumb shit. But that's just one sign because the signs are everywhere. And whilst I wish I had good news, there's quite the shortage of good news. All right. And of course, everybody has that inherent need to tune in and listen to the disaster prawn. And it is what it is. You're a doomsayer. Look around. Do you see anything nice coming from all of this? Like the only thing that could honestly improve the overall situations for people right now is by them coming together. All right, and that's kind of hard to do in a lot of cases. Like I won't lie, trying to pull off any kind of commune type thing is difficult because finding trustworthy people is hard. Finding people that stick around when shit gets thick is hard. Um, it's a thing finding your tribe these days is not it's not negotiable. It's something that everybody has to do because you know at any given time you got maybe a quarter. Let's say the unemployment rate is 25%, which is closer to where I think it honestly is. Um, if you are solo on your own and you have no other support systems, it's just you, yourself, and you. A job loss can completely destroy your life. On the other hand, if you are part of a larger friend group, if one of you falls down, the others can help prop whichever person back up. All right. And it's becoming more and more necessary, especially if you don't have family to rely on, to have other people that you can rely on. If you're a dude, I'm going to be completely honest, have. mm, Whilst I wish this was a equal opportunity thing, you cannot put your trust and faith in women at all. If you're a guy in the Western countries, you've got to rely on brotherhood. All right, you got to find a decent group of dudes, and link in. Honestly, link arms and hold on tight. All right, let me get into some more of this. So there were polls floating around on social media asking people, if they were employed or not. One on Instagram, but it's floating around. Like people are putting out the feelers naturally. And out of 2,000 people, 60% on the Instagram poll are unemployed. Now, that's just unemployment. That doesn't account for underemployment. Now, if we've honestly gotten to 60% unemployment, like on broad scale, all right, that'd be absolutely horrific. But still, underemployment also quite bad. We've got tons of people. I know tons of people. All right. I've even sponsored people towards education, like drivers, for instance. I can, in my capacity, I can use B2B connections and get CDL training for people. Okay. It is not cheap. It is not cheap. And generally, you only do, if they got the cash for it, then you can just flow through and it works out. If they don't, then it leans towards the trust factors. And even if you have it, all right, the person I'm immediately thinking of right now, they ended up getting their CDL and immediately ran into the wall. Like every company on earth seems to be begging for, the full size. I think it's Class A drivers, but none of the companies are honestly paying the Class A drivers worth a damn. Class B drivers, a lot of them are moving propane, nat gas. And it's like you can make something out of that. But the biggest part of CDLB driving in a lot of areas, especially the rural areas where you have the frac pads, is moving water. All right, because you need a lot of water, so they can do the hydraulic pressure and crack to get the gas. Mm. But ever since Biden and moving on from them, most of the gas pads have largely been, pulled back. They're not anywhere near as active as they used to be. I know quite a few of the drivers who went from pretty steady hours to nothing. All right, like they're showing up and just, getting the talk, and it's just like, yeah, take the day off. And it's just like, oh, thanks. I didn't totally just fucking drive all the way out here. Thanks a lot, bud. But then on top of it, even if you have the paperwork, you have the CDL, you have all of your ducks in a row, it's the same thing like if you had a college degree. You've got companies that they will say all day long that they need, more drivers, but the reality is if you are, let's say you're an effeminate Gen Z or something, if you are not a mid 30s to 40s, gruff hard ass trying to get hired for driving from any of these companies is damn near impossible. Like they will not, and part of it is the insurance. A good part of it is the insurance. Another part of it is too. There are companies that took on younger people as drivers, and within a month, these kids were flipping over CDLB trucks, and it's just like, well, shit. That's kind of problematic, but it falls into the same category of if how the hell do you get experience if nobody will hire you versus, I mean, the complete opposite side of the spectrum. If you have the experience, then nobody wants to pay you. All right. Give me just a moment here. I got a hell of a list to get through, or at least to get started with, but a lot of people are generally worried about the financial situations. And the fact that, of course, Trump came out, what was it, a couple days, I think it was a couple days ago, it could have been more than a week, I'm not exactly sure, saying that he didn't want to blow up the housing market. And the reality is, you cannot have one thing without the other. All right, fundamentally. So, I've said this before in a different recording, but I'll reiterate it here because it's important. Essentially, what the governments are doing is they are paying money to subsidize the youth all right, mm, to keep them in shit jobs, all right, just to ensure that jobs are available, even if they're shit jobs. To ensure that jobs are available, they offer all the tax cuts and everything else. So effectively, they don't really get shit from having a lot of these companies, these smaller companies, even the bigger ones. They don't get shit in terms of local tax revenues, state tax revenues, federal revenues. Really, we're just shifting an equal amount of coins around on a board. At the end of the day, there's not too much of a benefit from most of it. The only real benefit is for the younger people. You keep them working, at least you have some jobs available. So ideally, you get them working. So even if they're working shit jobs and they're getting paid shit, at least they don't feel complete unending doom. All right. But then on the flip side of it, whilst they're printing to make up for the tax loss there, they're also printing to prop up the boomers' retirement, Social Security, and housing market. Well, the problem is they go back and forth. All right, the shit jobs, they don't pay enough for people to live, so naturally, the federal government and the state governments have to essentially team up to get the money printed to pay for the social welfare benefits to keep the low wage workers going. Meanwhile, they have to, which then also leads to inflationary conditions, which then they have to balance out by not just printing X amount to pay for the boomers, but they have to inflation adjust at least to the lower level, the lower stated level of inflation that they claim. They have to inflation adjust the boomers, so when they print, they have to print a little bit more, and this cycle goes back and forth, where essentially there is, if you look at just the bare resources instead of the dollars, there's this flow back and forth where they're stealing from the youth to give to the old, then they have to steal it back from the old to give it to the youth, and it's just this cyclical. It's going down. All right, and that's the thing. It's hard to it's hard to say that there's good news when people are under such massive pressures. Like the costs are legitimately going higher. We are watching, all right, we are watching the end of the empire, all right, and a lot of people are realizing this, all right. I mean, the files that shall not be named because God knows they will shove you down in the algorithm if you mention the name, but more of those got released recently, and it's just like, yep, the US is getting closer to, I think it was perestroika for the USSR. Give me just a second to double check that. Perestroika. Was it perestroika? Structuring, reform of the political system. Shit. What? Is it Glasnost? Openness and transparency. Yep. All right, so it's Glasnost. We're getting closer to the American Glasnost and Perestroika. And it's just like, oh shit. So all of the deep dark secrets are going to leak out, and the overall situation, and on the ground, it's going to get worse. You already got tons of people who are talking, especially, post the Somali fraud investigations. You've already got a horde of people who are like, all right, you know what, fuck it. You guys aren't enforcing the laws. We're not going to pay the taxes. And it's just like, oh shit. Yep, this is how it starts. This is honestly how it starts, because that combined with the e-files, it's kind of hard to tell people to be good little minions and pay their taxes when it's going to quietly fund certain politicians and their dirty habits. We're on the verge of collapse, all right? But bringing it back, like, whether it's more and more of the e-commerce going towards the flip cheap shit and get whatever sense you can from it, or whether it's the fact that more and more companies, like we have come full circle in this, all right? The fact that, oh, what was it? Oh, it was a quote lifted off of Sean Ryan's podcast, where it's like we have twice as many government workers as we do like blue collar workers in general. And it's just like there's no fucking way. But it honestly, the problem with government percentage of GDP, all right, and I still stand by this. I'm pretty sure I've said this before in one of the recordings that went out. I stand behind the idea that we are going to see 80% government to GDP. I swear that has got to be the direction that this goes because, and that's not even necessarily accounting for UBI, that's just accounting for the fact that you need a way, you need a mechanism to put a decent amount of money into people's hands. Now, Trump going through and purging a lot of the federal workers is problematic. Do the federal workers do anything? Not necessarily. I mean, anybody who's seen the raw side of the bureaucratic, well, can't call it a machine, it's more of a slug. Anybody who's seen it knows that very little happens, and really all you have to do to hold a government job is you don't even have to think. They actively encourage you not to think. If you're in a government job, you're essentially just sitting there with your hands over a keyboard, just static. All right. And you shouldn't have any actual thoughts going through your head. All right. But those worthless jobs that do nothing provided enough spending power to the people who got those jobs that it helped make up for the fact that we don't fucking produce shit. Now, a lot of the companies, of course, larger companies have gone out there and have kissed Trump's ass when it comes to, oh, yeah, sure, we'll bring back production to the U.S. and touch them back on it. There is a concerted effort still by the, I want to say global 1%, but top 10%. There is a global effort to try to fuck DJT over in terms of what they're trying to actually do. All right, they're essentially trying to get the U.S. out of the position that it's been in. All right, to essentially break off the reserve currency status and get us back to manufacturing again so we can start having an actual functioning country and an actual functioning economy again. All right, the problem is Cantillon effect, the fact that, or Cantillon, however you want to say it, the fact that once you become the world's reserve currency, we've printed so many dollars and generated so many bonds to create. We create the paper that underpins the entire global financial system. And the problem is anytime anything breaks, we have to print to fix it. All right. And because of our position in the world, literally every other country can run their national currencies into the ground, stimulate their exports, and they have all the factories, they have all the jobs that were sacrificed. And the problem is, especially if you look at places like West Virginia and the Northeast, the Rust Belt, the Coal Belt, all these places that got left behind, you've got people whose only real economic possibilities are for the girls. They pump out kids and live off the welfare system. And for girls and the guys, the only way that they can honestly get a job is not getting a job and just collecting disability benefits, which might end up being the de facto universal basic income based on the fact that not only now, I'm not going to say that Gen Z is unemployable. What I am going to say is increasingly, based on what we're seeing, damn near the entirety of the population's becoming unemployable. All right. And this is tied with the fact that everybody's giving up. All right. This is one large thing. Give me just a second here. This is one thing that's been pervasive. People are just throwing in the towel. They can't stand it anymore. The jobs, oh, good God. Most of the jobs are incredibly fucking toxic. The toxicity is increasing because the wages aren't rising, and really what the US needs, and this ties into the reason why the housing market has to blow. It has to blow up. Essentially, going back to Besant saying that we have to have a situation where American workers, actually, and Western workers in general, if you spread it to the European countries, Western Europe, essentially we have to have a situation where labor wins for once. And there are quite a few interests in that not happening. But this is the thing, this ties into Marxian arguments where it's like, okay, you can fuck the workers to death, and they absolutely have fucked workers to death. And on top of the fact that they fucked workers to death, they also got them to sign on for student loans so they can hopefully get some office jobs. And the office jobs ended up going overseas too, so now we have literally nothing. Literally nothing. And with the loss of the government jobs, even less of nothing. All right, how the hell do you get money flowing in the fucking economy? You could justify it through labor, but with all the jobs gone, how the fuck do you hand people checks? All right. But the housing market's got to go. It's got to break. Just fundamentally, everything, and you got to look at it like this too. When you look at the boomer generation, for better or worse, just stick with me here. One of the biggest problems with the boomer generation is they blew the size and scale of the economy up massively. But as the boomers start to vanish, we'll say, once the boomers are gone, the economy collapses. Like this was inherently unsustainable. All right. This was inherently unsustainable. The only way to grow the economy past the boomers under this kind of structure is if you had 3 or 4 times the amount of people for every single generation. So 4x the millennials, and then 8 to 16x Gen Z, and it's just like, holy shit, that ain't gonna happen. And honestly, one of the problems, so the term excess male, that is more of a black pillar term, but it's generally for it's generally for guys put in the position where the jobs are shit, can't get a hoochie, won't have kids, won't have a family, won't have a house, won't have a decent fucking car that runs, won't have anything. Born too early for X and too late for Y. Um, the thing is, economically speaking, one of the reasons why government spending is going to end up being 80% or more of the GDP in time is because we are effectively in an all out war. It's just behind the scenes. It's billionaire versus billionaire. It's interest group versus interest group. It's national economy versus national economy. And this is why the lead up and the fight for resources is going to become fucking can't even talk. prolific. There we go. It's why it's going to become prolific. You can't balance this. All right, like when it comes to balancing the books, you can't balance it. There is no balancing it. Once the boomers work out of the system, the American economy collapses entirely. All right, and there's no real stopping that. This was an inevitability. You screw the youth over because you have to think about all of the knock on consequences. In order to prop up the boomers in the housing market and Social Security and all the other the pensions, all this shit, in order to prop up the old, they screwed the youth. Well, the consequence of screwing the youth is they never got houses, family formation collapsed, relationships became even more transactional because why would a girl stick with one guy when she could screw four different dudes over the same amount of time and get four times the resources? All right. Offshoring the jobs, it drove overall costs down and drove pollution down, but still, it drove the cost down, but it also drove down the wages. And then migrant hordes, bring them in, you raise the housing prices, and you eliminate a lot of the even, shit entry level jobs. Now you have a gigantically compounded problem. The younger generations don't have houses, so they don't benefit from the money printing. Because they don't have houses and their jobs are shit, and whether they have a degree or not, they're not having kids, they're not having families. The women with the girl power bullshit has gone way too fucking far, and it's led to just I want to say genomic disaster, but we haven't seen that part yet. All right. So there's no stability in any of that. So the youth have not had, for the most part, the youth have not had a fucking second to just sit back and chill the fuck out. No vacations, no time off. It's just work, 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 work. They got nothing. All right. And you've got, my generation, millennials, the oldest millennials are into their 40s now. And they're still broke as shit. And Gen X, too. I won't forget about Gen X. Gen X, also, a lot of them broke as shit. So you've got Gen X broke as shit, Gen Y broke as shit, Gen Z broke as shit, and Gen Alpha is going to be broke as shit. Because these guys got nothing to their name because we had to bail out the boomers' bad decisions because they got nothing, and not just bail them out, but reinforce their fucking bad decisions with the printing press. Because they got nothing, they're not viable to the females. Because they're not viable for the females. I mean, women can claim all they want to that, it's not about the money, it's about the personality. And it's just like, no, bitch, it's the money. It's the money. All right. You put a rich guy and a poor guy, stand them next to each other and have a chick choose. She's going to go with the rich guy every single day of the week. All right. And if she goes with the poor guy, she'll be DMing with the rich guy. All right. Because the broke guy, he's going to be broke. He's going to probably stay broke. The rich guy, he might stay rich. He might go broke. But at least over the time that he's still rich, they're going to have a lot of fun. All right, so you screwed over the youth to prop up the old, and now you don't have any kind of economic capacity. All right, you can't even follow the spending trends. A good chunk of the modern economics was built off of what happened during the boomers, and a lot of these companies, and this is massive for the companies, for the corporates, they built their models of future sales based on essentially a continuation of the boomers. and they didn't get that. They did not get that. Sales targets, they're always high, but they honestly should have hit those targets if all things being fair, if things worked out like they were supposed to. But millennials without houses don't buy washers, don't buy dryers, don't buy new ovens, ranges, any of that shit. They're not buying new refrigerators. They have a mini fridge that has been going for like 8 to 10 years and is still running. And it's just like, it was cheap. You could get it on a credit card. It's perfect. Does everything you need it to do. So, in terms of any of the appliances, screwed. In terms of family formation, like you look at, oh shit, I won't say the name, but you can figure out the company. They tried to kill Randy Marsh in South Park. Anyway, they've got an entire business built around people having kids. An entire business model, or at least a subset of the wider business model, is based around people having kids. Well, as it so happens, as people have less kids and the overall, decline in terms of the population continues, people have less kids. People are already, broke, depressed, divorced. They've already been through the fucking ringer. They have no interest in having kids at this point, especially if you get to 40 years old and you still have nothing. Kids aren't exactly on the top of your priority list for most people. It's just like, Jesus fucking Christ, I'm this old and I can't afford shit. Fuck that. Fuck it. Now, there are some people who will still absolutely go out and just crank out units, but they're also significantly poorer, as the number one defining characteristic of people in poverty. They had kids they couldn't afford. If you have kids that you can't afford, and again, this is the reason why people just don't have kids. They can't fucking afford to. All right? But the companies that rely on selling wipes and diapers and everything else, they're all in a bit of a worrying situation over time. And should you act as an investor and ask for certain information, they'll give it to you. They'll give it to you based on the declining birth rates. They're going to lose a huge chunk of business. They're not going to be able to make they'll be able to make a dime, but they're not going to make anywhere near as good money as they used to, just because the entire market's dying. But that's just one out of a billion examples of things going wrong. Essentially, the shorthand of what has to happen is, if the boomer economy collapsed, if we just front run the collapse and make it happen sooner, if we accelerate it, then there is the opportunity that maybe, just maybe, the younger generations finally can get into housing and still have enough time that, I mean, essentially what you have to do for the millennial generation, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, but mostly, the millennials, maybe to a certain extent Gen X, but they're pretty small generationally. But for the millennials and Gen Z, essentially what you have to do is you have to completely revitalize the economy. I know, it's a long fucking stretch. You have to revitalize the economy, and you essentially have to hand them not paper wealth, but actual wealth. The wealth that they would have made if you let the economy naturally correct and housing prices to crash back when they should have. You essentially have to figure out overall how much wealth has been screwed out of the youth by trying to prop up the boomer economic system and give it to them. And in that case, they'll finally have enough financial security that they can actually take a day off. They can actually breathe. They can relax. They can go take a fucking vacation. Maybe they can go on a Viking cruise for once. They can chill out for a little bit. And with that extra time to chill out, maybe they decide they want to build their house a bit more. Maybe they want to decide that they want to start owning companies or start building their own in direct competition to the lethargic, half dead zombie corporates that we have now. Essentially, the only way to save the American economy is by destroying it. There's no other way. All right, and it's going to happen regardless. We can either have the controlled demolition, which is kind of the direction that we're on, or we can just wait for it to break on its own, which, with the reasonable amount of accelerationism that we have had, that's right around the corner too. It's a question of, for the controlled demolition, is there going to be enough food, enough clean water, and enough medical support? All right. You see the shift in the military. All right. That's also another perfect indicator. We're not just going to pull back from being global police, but we're going to try to hold the Western Hemisphere, which is definitely going to be important in terms of, yoinking raw materials from South America and using it for our hopefully future industrial base in North America. The problem is with that, though, we don't even have the military capabilities. Now, you know, this is not classified information. This is shit that you can glean if you just take the time. The US does not have the military capabilities to hold the Western Hemisphere either. We don't. That's the honest to God truth of it. We don't. We do not have the manpower. We do not have the resources. We do not have the financial capability to make the entire Western Hemisphere all American. We don't have the capability. All right, we barely, and this is, I wish I was fucking kidding. We barely have the capability to maintain ourselves as a nation, as a solid one country. We barely have that capability. All right, militarily speaking, like, yeah, you could fly a bunch of fighter jets and, use it to spook the people into paying their taxes, doing their thing. But it's the thing. It's throwing good money after bad. Like, the reality is if we don't get a manufacturing base built up in the United States, and I mean massive. This is a gigantic fucking change. But if we don't get the factories back, we don't have a country. All right. And the reality is, there is a lot of interest and a lot of money that is very much trying to stop the re-rise of the United States. There's a lot of foreign money. There's a lot of foreign actors. There are a lot of people who do not want to see this country recover. All right. And it will be an actual recovery. If the controlled demolition goes smoothly, there should still be food on the shelves and everything should roughly work out. It's going to suck. And it might take an entire decade, but honestly, looking at the overall global situation and the financial situation, we really don't have a decade. And honestly, if one of the first steps, if you wanted to try to recover the situation, is essentially you've got to boot investment out of the housing market. Give me 1 second. Okay. You have to boot investment out of the housing market. Okay. If houses were no longer a retirement asset and prices were allowed to naturally drop to where they should be, especially with the quality of a lot of the houses on the market, then you would have the potential um, to begin to revitalize the demographic situation. But again, we have to go from this essentially slave mindset. We have to move away from the idea that, we have to have everybody grinding away 40 hours a week, slaving their life away to prop up a fucking machine that has no justification for existing anymore. All right, we have to move past the idea of chaining people to debts because essentially the entire economy, what it comes down to, is they created a very clever system to give you nothing and get you to run on a hamster wheel for it for your entire fucking life. Like, you look at it for what it is, like, people take out mortgages and they take out mortgages and they end up on the hook for 100, 200, $300,000, and they'll be paying that mortgage off for the entirety of their fucking life. And of course, there's no fucking stability anymore. So trying to fucking keep ensuring that you can make that fucking mortgage payment over the course of 30 or 50 fucking years is incredibly fucking difficult. All right. And it puts a lot of stress on people that it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, let alone the fact that the one, two, $300,000 that they quote unquote lent you, they didn't fucking lend you a damn thing. The way the banking system actually fucking works is when you go in to take a mortgage, when you fill out the paperwork for that, you're creating a security. You're creating a mortgage note. All right. The bank doesn't have the money. And I assure you, I've been on the inside of the banks. I know this shit firsthand. The banks have no money. And they got money, but, on hand, if you had to try to get $300K from a bank, they'd call the cops on you for trying to take out your own fucking money. They don't have it. It would take them days if they authorized it. All right. Here's the reality. The banks, when you go in, you fill out the paperwork, the bank acts as the sponsor. All right. It gets rating, it gets all that shit. What the bank does is they go into their own books, they deposit to themselves 300 grand for the total cost of the mortgage, and that 300 grand gets credited to your account. The credit is money creation. They create $300,000 out of thin fucking air, and you're paying for it. If that did not exist, and then on top of it too, they don't hold on to the fucking mortgage debt. They might service it, but normally they farm that out to another to an actual dedicated mortgage servicer, and the note gets sold normally within a week at latest. That $300,000 mortgage note, they just sell it off into the market. Some Saudi Arabian buys it, and they collect proceeds off all your fucking payments. Meanwhile, the bank is back to full. Not only did they get the 300K back, but they got some interest on top of it. They got a share of the total interest charge. And it's just like, good fucking God. If we didn't let debt influence all the prices, if we didn't let credit just be infinitely created, and the minimum requirement holdings for a bank, I forget the exact term, but it's still, ever since COVID, it's been 0%. The reserve requirement ratio, that's what it is. 0%. So they literally, with zero fucking dollars, they can create infinity credit since COVID. Okay? And the reality is, like, the people in charge of these systems have so much contempt for normal people that they refuse to see things for what they are. You are not going to have an American economy if you don't stop fucking over the people. They've created, it's one hamster wheel after another. It's one and another and another and another. You run fastest on the smallest one and it slowly turns, just like the gear ratios in a transmission. It slowly turns the outer ones. And transmission is not exactly the perfect example here, but you do 10 revolutions on your smallest one, you get 1 revolution on the ring outside of it. And it just keeps going. You cannot have credit anymore. You can't allow debt. You can't allow infinite credit financing for house after house after house after house. You can't have corporations buying into houses. You can't have people buying multiple houses using debt. Essentially, what you have to enforce is, for the housing market, you have to kick the fucking banks out, which is going to be a hell of a fucking ball ache because it's an easy moneymaker for them. You have to kick the banks out. You have to force that all mortgages have to essentially be paid on the spot. That alone is just like, well, shit, if you need them to be paid on the spot, then that's going to force prices down because who the fuck has that kind of money on hand? Very few people. Very few fucking people. Tied in with it, you got to ensure that the people who buy property in the United States are actually citizens of the United States. You have to kick out not just domestic corporations, but foreign corporations from being able to launder their money using the American property market. And given we don't even have it that bad, the Canadians have it worse, the Australians have it worse. Their housing markets, I mean, we joke about California crack shacks, but going for $1 million, but you look at whether it's the UK, Canada, any of the quote unquote allied nations, they are all taking dirty money and helping to launder it through the housing markets, respectively, their own national housing markets, and they've displaced their local populations. The thing is, these people who are in control of these institutions and these large corporations, they really do not want to have to fucking pay people. They really don't. They don't want to give people a fucking fair shake. They like being on top of the fucking pile. All right? They love being the king of the hill. They don't want to lose that. They don't want to lose their power. The Bezoses of the world don't want to lose their power. They don't want to lose their wealth. They don't want to lose the fact that anywhere they fucking go, they are treated as if they're gods. They really don't want to lose that. But if you don't, if you keep creating the billionaire class as the focal point, if you keep centralizing the power and control in the economy, you're not going to have a fucking economy. This is the thing. Ownership is very fucking important. It's very fucking important. If you ask, how would people treat a house that they own versus a house that they rent? You already know the fucking answer. If you own it, you're going to care a lot more about things. If you don't own it, you're not going to give anywhere near a fuck because you know good damn well that the landlord's going to fuck you out of your security deposit anyway. All right? Oh my God, there was a blade of grass that got bent. Oh, it's going to cost $6,000 to fix. You know? They really do not want to give people a fair shake, but the reality is they've sucked all the oxygen out of the room. The workers in the national economies are fucking suffocating under the weight of all of the things that have been done to prop up their bullshit. And the reality is, you've displaced almost the entire national workforce and the entire natural economy in every one of these nations. The consequence is going to be the entire system is going to collapse from it. And AI, honestly, I'm starting to shift on my view of AI. if you look at artificial intelligence for what it is, it's starting to look more like a fucking bailout for the tech sector. On top of the fact that they're offshoring and outsourcing everywhere they possibly can, it's starting to look more like a fucking bailout for tech. And it's just like, oh, sweet fucking Jesus. And this is the thing, it's all indirect, it's all buried. They don't just come out with the shit. But they've been propping up so many things. The federal printing press, the national printing presses have been propping up shit that doesn't work for a long fucking time. The reality is we've come full circle. We really are incredibly close to total event collapse of the national economies. All right. And honestly, most people, they look at the labor rates that are being offered and they can't even fucking justify drawing the breath to say, fuck that shit. All right. They can't. They can't. Essentially, right now, oh, good God. I haven't done the numbers in a while, but if you were to legitimately adjust to inflation, this was back when Max Kaiser and Stacy were fucking big on RT. You'd be looking at having to give the average American just at a minimum, you're looking at a minimum wage of $70 an hour, 76 an hour for basic labor. That's how badly labor has been fucked in the West. All right. This is the thing. Like the boomers will naturally go out and say, "Oh, you're just being lazy shits, and I could do it. You could do it too. Pick yourselves up by the bootstraps." Well, it's kind of hard to pick yourself up by bootstraps that you can't afford. That's the thing. You can't afford the bootstraps anymore in these countries. All right. But the reality is one, you have to actually, and this ties into, I think it's Catherine Austin Fitts talking about, you have to actually enforce the fucking laws. And the thing is, the people in charge of the national economy is the people in charge of government. These people, the last thing they want to do is enforce the laws, because if they enforce the laws, they have to take themselves down with it. This is the thing. If they honestly were to enforce the laws that are on the books, they'd all have to cuff themselves, because they're all just as guilty. They all profited off it directly and indirectly, backroom deals everywhere. The thing is, they don't want to have to play the game honestly, but the reality is, so much of the economy has become fraud now that this is the thing. You've got so much bullshit being propped up by an increasingly dwindling, willing and available workforce. People aren't going to work to be poor. People work so they can have something. They have no ownership. They have no reason to give a fuck. You've completely disincentivized the entire structure. People went to college, got advanced degrees. They got nothing to show for it. Honestly, it's difficult to wrap one's head around all this shit. It really is. I think I'll end it here. This was supposed to be more news, less opinion, but honestly, I couldn't help myself. You're going to have to forgive me for that. That being said, if you are interested in personal or business consulting, stop by www.spadesconsulting.com without the dash. If you are interested in written content, check out the Substack, although I'm still way behind and don't know when I'm going to get back to that. If you enjoyed the video, like, favorite, sub, comment, tickle the bell, ring the bell, ding the bell, finger bang the bell, do all the things to the bell, hype, leave a comment, do all the things. I do read the comments, and I will see you guys next time.